I rate Goblin Slayer anime as an 8 out of 10. This show depicts what I would envision a fantasy world being like. The combat is brutal and merciless, and an effectiveness to win, which I feel is realistic and very engaging, but unsettling at some points. For a show about goblins, it does a good job of showing other fantasy monsters and races that I would expect to see. The show, in my opinion, is worth your time, but not for the faint of heart. From this point on, I'm going to go into a more in depth review about the aspects of the show that I liked and disliked. While I'm not going to ruin the ending, the next bit could count as spoilers if you prefer to be surprised. Goblin Slayer isn't the traditional overpowered main character in the sense that he has great powers. However, he is brutally ruthless when it comes to accomplishing the task of killing goblins, and he is very dedicated at that task. The determination of this stoic hero is what drew me into this show. He's an average guy who's been through something horrible. It's hardened him, and he wants to prevent that from happening to others. There's no kingdom building in this show. He doesn't even own a house. He just rents a room at a farm. He has no money. He has no power. And the fame that he does have is basically people ridiculing him because he doesn't hunt anything but goblins. The magic in this show is good, in my opinion. They come up with new spells that I've never seen before. The shaman creating, skeletons out of engraved bones was interesting and cool, I thought. So things like casting two spells at once was a little off-putting to me. But they use scrolls as well, which you rarely see in fantasy anime. There is some debate that Goblin Slayer counts as a harem show. Personally, I think that it does. A harem is defined as a male character who has two or more female interests in him romantically. But there's no requirement that he has any interest back in them. The farm girl is constantly waiting on him. The priestess is blushing when she thinks about him. The shield maiden slept with him when she didn't need to. The guild girl makes romantic overtures. To me, that's enough female interest in the main character for this show to qualify as a harem, even if it doesn't fit into that traditional harem anime box. But your mileage may vary. This show does excel at the fantasy aspect. We see dwarves and elves as well as fantasy monsters, and not just goblins. The main character isn't nobility and doesn't interact with nobility much during the show, but the feudal system still seems to be in place, if largely ignored to focus on the life of common people and adventurers. For me, this is a much better depiction of what the average life would look like in medieval times, and I enjoyed pondering it. I felt like it was more relatable than the animes where the main character is constantly talking to kings, princesses, legendary heroes, etc. I think they did this very well. On the negative side, the rape and the torture are over the top for me. They could have depicted this without drawing it out in such graphic detail, without taking away from the show. The social interactions in the story dragged in places, and I would have preferred for it to be replaced with more action. Because of these issues, I gave it an 8 out of 10 stars, but I do think that it's worth your time. I mean, it's still above average.